Today's lesson is about weather station models and hurricane tracking. A station model, such as you see here, is a series of symbols that represent the weather at a particular place and time on a weather map. Now, one of the symbols that you'll notice here is this big center circle. Well, that tells us about the sky cover, or sometimes you can call it cloud cover. And there's always a legend that should be provided to you so that you understand what the shading of the circle represents. For example, this circle right here that's clear represents clear skies. And you can go kind of through and see what all of them mean. If it's completely shaded, that means overcast or 100% cloudy. 3/4 shaded means that it's 75%, or we can say mostly cloudy. Half and half, partly cloudy, that's 50%. 1/4 cloud cover, that's 25%. Now, the legends that you might see may be different than the one you see here. So it's important to make sure that you read the legends and that you observe them carefully so that you can understand what the symbols actually mean. Another symbol that we'll find on a station model is what we call the weather, which is really just the amount of precipitation that's coming from the sky. So there's only really two symbols that we have to know. One is a little dot, which represents rain, and then a little star or an asterisk, which represents some amount of snow. The more dots there are, the more rain there is, and likewise for the snow. You notice in our sample here that this only has one dot, so that means that this area is having a little bit of a light rain. Now, attached to the circle is a kind of like a bar, and then what we call feathers, or some people call them flags. This whole symbol right here indicates the wind speed and the direction. Now, looking at our legend, you'll see that they have pictures that represent the different amounts of wind speed. Now, this legend actually records the speed of the wind in knots. Sometimes you'll see them recorded in miles per hour. So be very careful to observe your legend carefully as you select answers on a quiz or a test. 5 knots has a little half feather that is inset off the bar. And so that's how you can tell the difference between 5 and 10. 10 has a full feather that's off the very end of the bar. Again, 5 is inset and it's half the size of a regular feather. Sometimes they call these feathers or barbs or flags, so you'll hear me use those words interchangeably. 15 knots, such as what we see in our station model sample here, is represented by one full feather and then a half. And then going all the way up to 50 knots, 50 knots is represented by like a triangle, and you can see how we can use a combination of feathers and these triangles to represent any amount of wind speed. Now, the direction is just by looking at the location of the bar as it is attached to the center circle. In this case, if north is here, then this bar is situated northwest. Now, the wind direction is indicated from the direction that it's coming from. So this means that the wind is coming from the northwest. If I could draw an arrow of what that actually would look like, the wind coming from the northwest, it would actually look like this. So that's what the wind would actually look like. But we put this in this direction because we want to acknowledge that the wind is coming from that direction. Now, the last two symbols that we want to look at is the temperature, which is always given in the upper left-hand corner, because we always read from left to right, so the most important information always goes to the upper left. So our temperature is 57, and that's always in degrees Fahrenheit. And then our pressure, which this is 1,020 millibars, is located on the upper right. Now let's put some of these into practice. Oh, by the way, this is how these station models would be used on a map by a meteorologist. And you can see they look a little bit different than ours. These are color coded and they have their temperatures in the center. But it just depends on how the meteorologist wants to display the weather information about that area. Again, looking at legends are very important. Now let's do some practice. For problem number 1, this is the information. I just want to explain it to you as we go over it. The cloud cover, you'll notice that it's fully shaded, so we would call that overcast, or actually it would be 100% cloudy. The wind speed, it only has one full feather off of the bar, so we would call that 10 knots. The bar is pointing directly over the north, which means that that's the direction that the wind comes from. Again, that is a very, very important thing to notice about these, is that it's where the wind is coming from. It's a light rain because there's only one dot, and the temperature is 78 degrees Fahrenheit and 1,002 millibars for the barometric pressure. Now going to problem 2. You can see that the cloud cover is half and half, so you could say 50% cloudy or partly cloudy. It has a half of a feather that is situated off of the bar, so that means 5 knots. The wind direction is coming from the east. Again, that is something that you really want to concentrate on, that these are the winds that are coming from. If I were to draw this, the wind would actually look like it's going this way. And then we have a lot of precipitation, and so we note that we're calling this heavy rain. 52 degrees Fahrenheit, 980 millibars for our barometric pressure, which comes from a barometer. A couple of more sample problems. For number 3, the cloud cover is clear skies, or we could say sunny. 30 knots, there's 3 feathers. The direction of the wind is coming from the west. You could say no weather, or you could say sunny. 84 degrees Fahrenheit for the temperature and 1,018 millibars for the pressure. And the last one. Cloud cover, you could say mostly cloudy, or 3/4 or 75% cloud cover. 25 knots for the wind speed because there's 2.5 of these feathers that are off the bar. From the south, moderate snow. There's 2 of these little snowflakes. 32 degrees Fahrenheit and 952 millibars of pressure. All right, now let's talk about some hurricane tracking. Hurricane tracking is very important, especially in South Carolina, because we often get hurricanes in the summer, and so it's important that we know which way these hurricanes are going. A couple of things to notice about your map, and this may ring a bell from social studies when you learned this, but the coordinates are important to determine the location of anything, but in this case hurricanes. The numbers that are over here to this side are latitude, and the numbers at the bottom, or sometimes at the top of a map, are called longitude. The way I remember the difference is that longitude, and let me kind of scroll so you can see the name, the longitude, they're very long. Longitude is long, and long usually means vertical, like talking about the height. So these are long lines. And you'll notice that with the hurricane that I plotted, that this actually tells us something about the path of that hurricane. It sets a trend, and it lets us know if here in South Carolina if we need to worry or not. And currently it doesn't look like it's going to bother the mainland of the U.S. coast. It looks like currently it's swinging back over the Atlantic Ocean, but these are the types of things you want to keep a track of just to make sure that it's not going to endanger any part of the southern seaboard or eastern seaboard of the United States. Now let's talk about how we would track a hurricane. And in the picture you'll notice that we have South Carolina. As soon as I can grab our camera view here, move it back up. All right, South Carolina is right here. We'll put a little label right there. Well, it doesn't want to go there, does it? All right, and again, you'll notice that these are latitudes, and the latitudes are always measured in norths and south. Since we're above the equator, if you'll notice this number right here says 5. If we were to continue numbering, that number would be 0, and that would represent the equator. So this is north of the equator. And you'll notice this number here, it says 15 degrees. If we were to keep tracking over to the right, we would run into the prime meridian, which is also 0 degrees. So to the left of the prime meridian, these numbers that we see right here, these are going to be noted in west. So this is west longitude. And since we're just looking at the activity of the Atlantic Ocean as it relates to South Carolina's hurricane tracking, we're only going to use latitudes in degrees north and longitudes in degrees west. Now, to kind of track that, if we're concerned about South Carolina, follow your finger all the way over to these numbers, and you'll see that this would be between 35 degrees north and 30 degrees north. So we'll call that about 33 degrees north for the location. And we will look at the longitude, and if you follow your finger up, this says 80 degrees west. Follow your finger all the way up. So South Carolina is at 80 degrees west for its longitude. So this would be how you write the coordinates. Again, 33 degrees north because it's right here in between 35 and 30. And then 80 degrees right on this longitude line, 80 degrees west. And let's do one more. Let's talk about Cuba, which is right in this area right here. And I'm going to show you the coordinates this time, and we'll kind of make sure that they're right. Okay, if you look over, run your finger over, you could probably run a line actually to the 20 degrees north. You can run your finger right over this line, and Cuba's right at 20 degrees north. And then if you go straight down, it's 75 degrees west. So your latitudes are always given first, and then your longitudes. So north comes before the west. All right, I think that finishes our lesson for today. So now you have all the information that you need in order to answer your worksheets correctly. All right, have fun.